Is it possible to live alone on $11 XXHR? I'm a single mom with one daughter and I make $12.50 HR. No child support, no government assistance, and paying back student loans bit by bit. We get by fine. Not a lot of spare money, but bills are always paid, food in the cupboard. As a taxpayer, I have absolutely no problem with tax welfare money going to help single parents. There is no shame in that. I have lived off $11 arbitrarily for 2 years before I joined the Navy. Here are my observations. You will need to live somewhere where cost of living is low. This usually means in the middle of freaking nowhere. A big city of any sort is pretty much out of the question. In my case, it was in north central Idaho, working at a nursery as a landscaper, and at a gas station during the winter months. I lived in a small bedroom that I rented out of a nice old couple's house for $350 a month. As long as I was clean I can use their kitchen etc. and kept good relations with them, as some months I was stretched to make rent on time, but they trusted me to be able to pay them, as long as work was steady, and sometimes it wasn't. I was usually fine. After things like auto insurance, phone, and food, I usually had a couple $100 left over for whatever. If you're smart you put that money away for times you're short. I made enough to get by and live. However, that's about all you can afford to do. You spend too much time working to actually be able to make reasonable effort at other interests like school, not to mention find a way to reasonably afford them without going into ridiculous amount of debt. I lived too far away, 70 miles, from any school that had any respectable, accredited programs I was interested in, so that created its own issues. In short, living off $11 an hour is possible, with proper budgeting and a decent living arrangement, but don't go into thinking that it's somehow an acceptable long-term lifestyle. I did it because I felt it was better than being homeless, so I worked my butt off. Do what you got to do, but make plans for the future. Financial security is something that helps reduce stress and makes your life better all around. So do what you can to try and make self-improvements. If you can go to school, or find a business you could see yourself building a career and move up in, that would be what I would focus on. Don't try and get by for the rest of your life. If you know how to do it. I live on $1,100 a month. House payment is $460. Electric $70. Internet $60. Car in's $40. I usually spend $100 a month of food. In St. Louis, MO, I rent a 2-bedroom apartment for $575 a month. So I pay $287. I make $9.50 an hour and live very comfortably. I eat out too much, drink at bars, and I'm fine money wise. The only thing I don't have to worry about is car payments. My parents gave me my car. Everything else I cover on my own. This is a great city if you want to get by on not very much money. Goddamn. $575 a month, frick California. I'm looking to rent a 2-bedroom apartment next school year for $1,200 a month. Just depends on where you live, what lifestyle you're comfortable with, and how good you are with money. I made $10.50 an hour and about $500 to $600 every 2 weeks, not going to school or anything. We managed to get the landlord to let us have 3 people in a 2-person apartment, while 2 of us share a room. Rent was $900 and we all paid about $300 apiece. For internet and power, it was about $100 more. Water and trash included in rent. Then at my job we got free meals every shift, so we milked them for what we could. I was within walking distance of work, grocery store, movie theater, bus stop, transit center, everything I really needed. Times got tough sometimes and we had to live off of cup of noodles and top ramen. But it was a great experience for a teenager trying to grow up. Hope this helps. I make $15 an hour. I share a house with 2 other people. Rent is $1,350 or $450 per person, plus bills. At those amounts, I get by alright, and I'm pretty comfortable, but there isn't really a margin for safety net if something goes wrong. $11 HR will be tough in my opinion. What do you spend all your money on? I also make $15 an hour with my rent and utilities being about $450 a month, and I make it by very easily. One of my 2 monthly paychecks covers my rent, food, gas and insurance. The other $900 or so is extra. Yes, provided you follow the prime directive. Always strive to attain $3 of value for every $1 you spend. Better used good quality physical goods than cheap brand new ones. Fast and convenient food is expensive and holds less nutritional value. Cheaper to wear a sweater than turning up the heat. You don't need to impress anybody by spending more than you should. Montana here. We have had a stable economy this whole time, along with the housing market. We have high paying jobs with wind turbines and trains. You can also get a job like I have doing tech support and make almost $11 an hour and live just fine. I have a 2-bedroom house I pay $500 a month for. I always have plenty of cash in my pocket and can afford car payments on a pretty nice ride. We've got beautiful scenery, snowboarding. You should try it. Weed is medicinal and easy to get. No state tax. And if you move somewhere like Billings or Missoula, a pretty good culture scene. I was actually considering Montana as well. So good info to have. Also, I think one of the jobs I was applying to had openings in Billings, so I will definitely give it a closer look. It depends where you live. You can buy a house on $11 an hour and live pretty comfortably in the middle of nowhere. My mom lives on 8.25 and I'm living off 9.50. You'll be fine. In what city? It wouldn't give you much wiggle room for sure, but you could survive in a post-industrial city like Buffalo. Buffalonian here. I make about $20 an hour and find it tough. I make a little over $12 an hour and I support myself entirely with an apartment in a major city. It's absolutely feasible. Budget your food well though. Don't eat out. It's not that hard, and actually, it's pretty okay. I'm in a newly remodeled 2-bedroom apartment by myself. I can afford to keep my AC at 78 degrees, shower twice a day, eat healthy, and screw around on the internet on $10 an hour and 40 hours a week. With that stable 40 hours, I have plenty of time to invest in side projects such as websites. Those side projects are what fund my fun and other side projects. Moved to Australia. Our minimum wage is $15 HR. I think that's required considering every freaking thing that can kill you in a split second. You could probably do it, but I honestly don't think you'd be enjoying yourself very much. You'd be working a lot because you'd need pretty much all the money you could get, and then you wouldn't have leftovers to spend having fun. The question isn't, it is possible but should be, what kind of life would I have? If you're living on your own, I don't know what kind of government assistance would be available to you, especially if you have a job. I'd say your best bet would be to find some roommates. Not only would they keep you company, but your general cost of living would go down since the bills would be split. It depends where you live, but I make $21,000, which is less than $11 HR a year salary, and then maybe an extra $150 month at my part-time job. I live alone and do totally fine. No debt beyond student loans, and my standard of living is fairly high. I have a car and nice apartment and no problem affording food or anything else I need, plus I am able to save a good amount as well. I can't help but be amazed every time I see one of these threads. I live in Greece and I am a 33-year-old woman with a PhD in applied informatics. I am one of the very lucky people that has a stable job which took me years to find, and I am currently getting paid €1,100 a month. My rent for a crappy apartment is €450. I do not have a car since I cannot afford it. If I had one, I would need approximately €75 a week to fill the tank. If I get something to eat at McDonald's, let's say 2 hamburgers, small fries and small Coke, I'll need €10. If I want to eat at a crappy restaurant, I'll probably need €15-20. A beer costs €6 and a drink $8. Those are average prices at a normal bar, not fancy hotel prices. My internet costs €20 a month. €35 my cell phone. I download all my music, movies, TV series and games. I cannot afford smoking anymore cause it's €4 packet. I buy 1 new pair of shoes every 2 years. 2-3 new shirts every year. And once a year, I allow myself to buy something that I consider a luxury, such as an external hard drive or a new wallet or something for the house, like a microwave. I still haven't said a word about electricity, water, heat and groceries. I do not have a child to support. It's just me, living in my one-room apartment. I live in a European country and I have a PhD. I am one of the lucky ones because I do not work for basic salary and I have moved out of my parents' house. Short answer, yes, you can live with $11 an hour. Next time you think FML, I have to wait until next month to buy the new iPhone that just came out. Remember me? I make $10.25 an hour and supported my boyfriend while he was unemployed. We were comfortable. We ate pretty cheap but we still had extra money to buy video games and extra stuff. We probably spent about $200-275 on food a month. Our rent was pretty cheap too. $650 plus $50 in hydro. Our expenses were $80 a month for net, $20 a month for home phone and $90 for ourselves. No car, and I bike to work so I didn't have to worry about public transit very often. And we had 3 cats at the time. I lived in Southern Coastal California for a year on $8.50 an hour. I had roommates, shopped only at Mexican and Asian grocery stores, had bare bones car insurance, lived with roommates biking distance from my work, and had no health insurance. But it was fine. I even had money to occasionally do fun things like go out to eat or to concerts. I think you'll be fine, but you won't have much of a safety net if something goes wrong. Yes, $11 an hour. You should have no problem making $600 every 2 weeks after taxes. That is about $14,000 a year, which is only $3,000 less than starting airline pilots make. Very livable. Heck, I work with people who make $10 an hour, tax free, and make it just fine. I would also suggest using Cha-Cha and Amazon Mechanical Turk to supplement income for saving or personal use. Unemployed girlfriend is signing up for the Amazon thing now. Had never heard of that, but used to do KGB myself. Have an upvote for promise of a little extra income. If you can live on Wonder Bread, generic peanut butter and jelly, and Tang, you should be okay. Yes, if you live in a van down by the river, rent is the biggest expense. Haven't read everything but most people are missing the biggest issue OP will face. IT cost a frick ton to relocate. You're going to need your first month's rent and last up front. If you want electric and internet you're going to need a couple hundred to get that. If you're bringing a car that's gas and tolls. If you don't have all your own stuff to furnish the place that's a huge cost. I just relocated for a job and I had $1,800 from my tax return, and that was probably only 2/3s of my final cost, and that's with having family in the area to stay with while looking for a place. I've thought about this. Luckily I do have some money saved up, though not enough that I feel comfortable dipping into it on a monthly basis. I'm prepared to live without furniture for a couple months unless I find some real cheap stuff on Craigslist. Haha. Minimum wage is a death sentence. It seems quite possible to live alone on this much, although I'm not quite sure about the economy out west. I have a few friends that live on that much, although I'm still in college. I was gonna give you good advice, but then I compared my income to my expenses and realized I should have loads more money than I do. Assuming you don't have a huge car payment, and are fine with living in an okay but not stellar area, you should do fine on $11. Good luck. That's why financial counselors have you list out all your expenses and add them up. Because for some people actually having a physical representation in front of them of what they're spending is the only thing that can get them to change. It all depends on your expenses and how comfortable you are with savings, which largely depend on where you live and your lifestyle. I know guys who live at home with no expenses and go paycheck to paycheck on $15 HR because they're always spending their money on booze, food, and leisure. On $11 HR you can probably live in a small basement or bachelor apartment, but it won't be a very nice place. Depending on how much you drive you may be able to fuel up, although car insurance is quite variable depending on a number of factors. Having a roommate effectively splits your living costs in half. Rent, utilities, etc. A great roommate can make life a lot better, while a bad roommate can make life a living heck. When I lived on my own I was making $19 HR. And I lived quite comfortably with a roommate while saving a lot of money, although I didn't have a car. I feel like $11 HR is doable, but you might be cutting it close unless you're living very frugal. It is very difficult without a car in a big city where you don't need one, and with a car in any circumstance it may not be possible. When my roommate ditched me a few years back and left me with a $875 2-bed Updoot for the duration of the lease, I couldn't find a replacement roommate and had to foot it alone on about $11 an hour until the lease ended and I could move to a cheaper place. I got very tight with my money, itemizing every single dime I spent right down to cups of coffee, spending a maximum of $30 a week on food and not spending a dime on anything else outside of rent and bills. I did not go out at all outside of going out for a cup of drip coffee on the weekends and going to work. I would not recommend seeking out this sort of scenario, especially if you need a car. I did not own a car and bust into work, and was barely able to make it, as in I finished each month with maybe a few bucks extra. Absolutely, especially out there, even in my previous digs, outside Chicago, not the cheapest place in the world. If I wanted to live somewhere a bit smaller, drive an older car, and eat out less, I could have gotten by on that much, with a bit left over. Disclaimer, not that I actually did. My first job out there was salaried equivalent to $15.50 HR. The most important thing to consider is that unexpected crap does happen, and you need to keep some money in store to deal with it. And on a small income you're going to have to put aside a pretty big portion of your paycheck to keep that fund healthy. You're going to resent how much it cuts into your disposable income. But it has to be done, or else the very first little emergency you have will put you into a debt spiral that you won't get out of short of bankruptcy. I lived alone on $8.25 and saved quite a bit of money. I lived in a crappy basement suite in a large city. I make $10 HR with a full-time job. Granted, I do live with a roommate in our 1-bedroom apartment and I don't have a car, but right now I'm living off of it in Los Angeles while putting 50% into savings. It's definitely possible, just depends on what kind of lifestyle you choose to live and how closely you monitor your spending. As for the help I get, I am still on my parents' family phone plan, so that's a little help. Also, my father's health insurance still covers me until I'm 25, so I don't have to worry about that as a just in case. Otherwise, though, I do it on my own. I live in Boise, Idaho. While I am lucky enough to pay very little for my living expenses via owning a home, my buddy makes $10-11/hour part-time. I don't know exactly. He just started renting a new place apartment, actually a 3-story Victorian home partitioned into 3 apartments, in one of the nicer middle-class neighborhoods in Boise for about $450 a month, which includes everything but electricity and internet cable phone. I don't know his financial status other than he makes it paycheck to paycheck. I do know his cell phone is still through his parents' family plan, but he bought his car, insurance and all that. It would be kinda tough depending on your standard of living. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess he gets by on about $1,000 a month. I live in Boise too and I make just under $2,000 a month. I rent a cheap place off Warm Springs and do most of my grocery shopping at Winco. Idaho is very doable on a low income. I'm living by myself making $10 an hour. My rent is $570 a month. If you buy your own groceries and commit to not eating out much, it's really easy. I can save probably half my paycheck each month. Easily, it just depends on where and how you live. I've seen people do fine on less. Just out of curiosity, what kind of work are you looking to do? Depending on your job you might be able to save in certain areas. For example, I work in an office, so if the apartment I was living didn't have internet I probably wouldn't bother to get it since I could just surf the web after work. If you work for a restaurant then you can probably get 1 or 2 free meals off of them sometimes. Yes it is, but it's going to be hard keeping all those other people out from under your bridge. I don't know if you'll get to this. 1. Make sure you have something to do entertainment wise. If that means setting aside $30 a month to go see a movie in a theater or something of the sort. This could also mean not having cable, but having a console or computer game. I, personally, love Rock Band. 2. Pay attention to your bills. Turn off lights when you're not in the room, and develop good habits related to these. Same with water. Regardless of whether you're paying the bill, it's still a good habit. 3. Make sure you don't lose out on your diet. Don't skimp and do McDonald's. The cost is lower in the short run, higher in the long run. Medical bills, lack of energy, etc. Get some good protein in your diet, no matter how chintzy you're gonna be. 4. You can do it, for sure. It's just not a sustainable thing if you want to move up in the world. Save for vacations, retirement, an engagement wedding, etc. Good luck. I live in Utah and yes you can live for 11 an hour here. I make 15 currently and have a wife and kids. I have lived for less but not fun. My friend, I'm 23 years old. I make $11.68 an hour working 44 hours a week and going to university full time. I own my own $105,000 duplex and rent out the upstairs to help pay my mortgage and utilities. I walk to school and bus to work. Life's hard right now, but in a few years it'll all pay off. TLDR, you can thrive off of $11 an hour. Just be savvy. If you solely hold the lease to an apt and can charge roommates whatever rent the market will bear, think of it this way, at $400 a month, in the course of a year, that's like $5k in tax-free income. Short answer, number. Long answer, the long denied necessity of a discussion about real cost of living versus a living wage in a society that necessitates starting your adulthood with college debt. Utah on 11 an hour is doable, but you will live in a basement apartment and work 30-50 hours a week. The Unabomber had his own private cabin out in Montana living on less. I first moved out when I was 20 making $10 an hour and working about 23-30 hours a week. I had 2 roommates in a $900 a month apartment and our bills were generally around $100 per person. I was able to pull that off, but just barely, and my parents were paying for my car insurance at that point. They no longer do. I had to move back home when I was 22 because my roommates moved to California. I was there for about 8 months saving money. In the meantime I was promoted at work and now I'm making slightly more hourly than I was before. Still under $15, and I've graduated so I'm able to work full time. I'm 24 now and still have a roommate, but our rent is super cheap here. $610 a month and we're actually in a decent neighborhood. Including bills, we're paying a shade under $400 a month. I'm not struggling at all. I've paid off my student loans and have no outstanding debt. I'm able to save money, even. You have been visited by the Wisdom Pupper type. Study well pupper or you will fail your next text at school. Like and subscribe you magnificent person.